Good day, everyone. So, we now came to the last and final part of the series in the first part of the Unit 4 of the subject entitled Asian Studies. And today, our future destination is the developed city state of Singapore, a land full of opportunity and full of colors, a land called the Lion City. And so, what are you waiting for? Let us now travel on the beautiful state of Singapore. First is their land and people. Singapore is a tiny city-state republic south of the Malayan Peninsula. Its total area is only 618 square kilometers, which makes it the smallest Southeast Asian country. It is the third country strategically located at the Strait of Malacca and has benefited the most from this location. As we had said a while ago that aside from Malaysia, Singapore also benefited from its strategic location because it is a trading port, or it is where different European countries and trading countries stops when they went to Southeast Asia or even in East Asia. As you can see in the photos are the famous buildings and architectures and infrastructures being built at the port of Singapore. Even it is very small city state, but it is one of the major economic superpower in Southeast Asia. So there are three or four different pictures that I want to show you in this photo, which are the first is the main base of Asian telecommunication, air and sea traffic, trade, and banking operations like Hong Kong is a duty-free port. So Singapore is the main base of Asian telecommunications. There are different technologies and in terms of communication in Singapore. Another is that Singapore is the world's second busiest port, considering that it is part of an strategic location here in Southeast Asia. Because of this, many investors, many traders went to Singapore to negotiate and cooperate on the booming port of Singapore. Third is the Singapore is the third largest oil refinery center. Even Singapore doesn't have the sufficient oil reserve, but the oil refinery is located in Singapore, making it one of the contributing factor on the development of the country. And fourth is Singaporeans are highly disciplined and industrious and enjoy one of the highest standards of living and stable government in Asia. Because of this, Singapore fostered very disciplined individuals because they wanted to become a respectable country in the region. Singapore is the second most expensive city in the world. According to the EIU Cost of Living Survey on 2021, Singapore is the second most expensive city in the world, making it very hard to live if you don't have the capacity to provide your own means or your own economic stability. So even these many rich individuals went here to trade and to live the luxury of the Singapore. When I came to the people of Singapore, in a population of 4.6 million during the 2008 census, 76% are Chinese, 15 are Malay, and 5% are in Tamil Indian. So in Singapore, we have this very culturally diverse races which encompasses the whole population of the country. A family because of this, people here in Singapore develop a progressive individuals because it is rooted on the programs being implemented by the past administration in the country, including the family planning. A family planning policy and living space discouraged couples from having many children. English, Mandarin, Malay, and Tamil are spoken. So because of the high cost of living, many individuals were thinking on whether they needed in a child or more than one child to sustain their lives. Since 1984, the state introduced the teaching of Confucian ethics in school curriculum. This helped them to develop a a very ethical behavior in terms on how they live their lives, and which reflects in their actions and also reflects in their economy as well. Because if you have a disciplined individual, you have a very progressive country. Singapore has one of the highest concentrations of Filipinos in Asia, with 80,000 domestic servants and more than 10,000 skilled workers in offices and trade. Because of the booming economy of Singapore, many Filipinos for Filipino natives are encouraged to go to Singapore in order to seek a better job aside from our country and to sustain the needs of their family here in the Philippines. So that's the people of Singapore, the progressive and disciplined people of Singapore. And these people did not came just a single time, but it developed. These individuals developed for a very long period of time since their independence from the British colony or British occupation. So here is the history of Singapore. According to Malay annals, in 1160 Anno Domini, the Malay chief landed on the fishing village of Temasek, or the sea town, after a typhoon, and he saw a lion-shaped animal and called the place the poor a lion city. Or because of this tale, we had the lion city. Or the in this picture you can see the merlion or the Singapura merlion, which symbolizes the trademark of Singapore. Modern Singapore was founded in 1819 when Sir Stamford Raffles, which we had tackled last discussion, and established a trading post for the British East India Company. It became a part of the Straits settlements, and the opening of the Suez Canal further developed Singapore as a major entry point or entry path of the Southeast Asia. The British developed Singapore as an important Royal Navy base and boasted that it was an impregnable fortress because of its importance as a seaport. The British Navy made it as their base to consolidate their power here in Southeast Asia. Not only that, Singapore became a trading post, but the or trading port, but it is also a naval base, as elaborated by the British during their period or occupation in Singapore. And fast forward after the British colonization, here comes the Japanese occupation. The Japanese put an end to British pride in World War II. Only 2 months after World War II started, the British surrendered on February 5th on a humiliating surrender on February 15, 1942, and the Chinese and POWs in Singapore suffered terribly at the hands of the Japanese. Or we call the POWs as the prisoners of war. British rule was restored after the war, and Singapore became a crown colony in April 1, 1946, and later joined the Straits Settlements in the Federation of Malaysia. Here is the timeline on why Singapore became an independent city-state. Before, it was being occupied by the Japanese until they were being established as a colony of the British Empire, until they were being given a part or an opportunity to be part of Malaysia, but they did not continue this and choose to become an independent city-state in 1963. Singapore in 1965 experienced racial tensions between Mil and the Chinese drove Singapore leader Lee Kuan Yew into making a public announcement of separation because of the misunderstanding between the Malays and the Singaporeans. Lee Kuan Yew, or the founding father of Singapore, decided to separate ways with Malaysia. Despite an uncertain future, the Chinese majority of Singapore could not live under Malayan domination. Under the watchful eye of the British Commonwealth and the world, the separation proved peaceful. This is good in this country, and I hope this should be practiced on all over the country where there is when there is a separation of two territories. It should be based on peaceful negotiations. On August 9, 1965, Singapore unilaterally declared itself as a new republic under the leadership of Prime Minister Lee Kuan Yew. And who is Lee Kuan Yew? Lee Kuan Yew is a Cambridge-educated leader of Chinese ancestry. Singapore's democracy was dominated by disciplined but close circle of Chinese leaders in the Population or People's Action Party, controlled by Liquid and his allies, or controlled by Lee Kuan Yew and his allies. So Lee Kuan Yew is a politician and lawyer who became prime minister, as I had said, during his reign in 1959 to 1990. As you can see, his term of office is very long because many Singaporeans loved and were inspired by the programs or the policies that he made, which gave the Singapore a very developed nation that we know today. Lee Kuan Yew was born into a Chinese family. So as we know, Chinese were very entrepreneur. Chinese has a very entrepreneur, or they have the mindset of entrepreneurship that had been so Lee Kuan Yew established a strong policy and established Singapore during 19th century. His first language was English, and only upon entering politics did he acquire a command of Chinese as well as Malay and Tamil. After attending school in Singapore, Lee briefly enrolled at London School of Economics and Political Science before entering law degree in 1949 at Fitzwilliam House, Cambridge. There he headed the honor list. He also became a socialist. Although he was admitted in 1950 to the English bar, he returned to Singapore, and he was appointed as the legal advisor to the Postal Union and participated in negotiations to obtain higher wages for postal workers, and subsequently did similar work for other trade unions. Based on his academic and biographical background, Lee Kuan Yew is very capable of, or he suits at the role to become the prime minister of Singapore. Because of this, he was educated in the Great Britain, so his mindset is very westernized, but still inculcating in his mind that his roots, or where he came from. The opposition parties win few seats in the parliament. It appears that authoritarian leadership is accepted by the people due to the economic prosperity which they enjoy. So even there is a strict rule in the country, they did not hesitate to make Lee Kuan Yew as their president or their prime minister, because they saw how Lee Kuan Yew became important in influencing the policy of the country and the discipline of the Singaporeans. Its policy has proven successful, disciplined people and law and order, economic transparency and reliability, duty-free trade, urban planning, and emphasis on education and security, and during his leadership. Because of these policies that he implemented, Singapore unexpectedly grow compared to its or unexpectedly developed compared to its counterpart in Southeast Asia, even it is a very small city-state. As you can see, let us go back to the picture. We can see the very disciplined like the Japanese. They follow rules and regulations and they have strict rules and regulations. And if you do not follow this, you will be punished by the law implemented in their country. Its policies proven successful and the law order on the economic transparency in the country. Its huge wealth has cautioned it from the effect of many economic downturns, including the present global recession during the 2008 global recession. We can see here that because of the very good planning of the government and their economic policy, they were being exempted on the different global recessions that happened in the world, which makes them very stable nation. As you can see, these are the establishment being built in Singapore, the Marina Bay Sands. This is very famous not only as a hub for tourist destination but also for historical purposes and sustainable development as I discussed also. Singapore foreign exchange reserves was measured at 281.3 US dollar in February 2023 compared with 279.2 US dollar billion US dollar in the previous month. As we can see, the economic success of Singapore outweighs reservations about its harsh internal controls on civil rights and political freedom and allows its leader to look down on Philippines, which enjoys more freedom as a failed state. They often compare their country to the Philippines because the Philippines has a more democratic and free individuals compared to Singapore, who were being controlled by the government but not totally in terms of their regulations about the discipline of each Singaporeans. They often regard Filipinos and the Philippines as a failed state because of its openness, because there is no transparency, and some individuals were not being punishable by law because they said that the justice system or the system in the Philippines is not aligned to the disciplinary activities or policies compared to their to Singapore. So the government keeps firm control over the media and few opposition parties. The punishment for a crime can be harsh, including the whipping of minors and death penalty for capital crimes. And one example of this was when Flor Contemplacion was executed for the alleged murder for her comadre Delia Maga and another maid. Singaporean authorities refused clemency or to save her and to repatriate her in our country. Because of this, during the period of Fidel V. Ramos, Filipinos outraged because of this choice or actions done by the Singaporean government. As of now, here is the emblem of Singapore, and their as a trivia, here is their first female prime minister, Halima Yacob. Because of this, it shows that Singapore, aside from the notion that they have strict rules in terms of their regulation on the discipline of their individuals, but they uphold inclusivity, considering that their prime minister is a woman. And that's the Singapore, its history, and the people that lives in the Lion City. Because of this, we came to a reflection on these countries, that studying Singapore, Malaysia, and Indonesia, our previous topics in my discussion, is essential for understanding the cultural, economic, political, and strategic importance of Southeast Asia, including us, the Philippines. Because of this, discussion, it provides us the insight into the region's complexity, diversity, and potential, and that enables individual to participate and engage with this fascinating part of the world. So to recapitulate of all of our discussion, here is the map of Southeast Asia that we had discussed, including the Myanmar, the Thailand, Indonesia, the Philippines, the Brunei, and East Timor. For more information about the discussions that I had tackled in this series, here is a video or additional informations that you can use to further improve or to further enlighten you about our background in Southeast Asia. Here is my references which tackles or encompasses all my references aside from the book of Sonia F. Zaide and Gregorio Zaide. Once again, I am Kenneth J. A. Ikin at 2BSSE from Philippine Normal University, North Luzon. The topic that I had discussed is Chapter 20, Southeast Asia and the Malay World, Part 1. Today, I want to thank you everyone for your cooperation, and I hope for your cooperation in sharing your opinions and ideas regarding my chapter about Southeast Asia. Once again, mabuhay and happy learning. Thank you.